I don't want to miss any of these presentations. In this section, before we break for afternoon tea, I think we've got the onward march of Dreadnought. What else have we got? We've got a drug development that could be a real game changer when it comes to treating brain injuries, including stroke. We've got the Southwest first mine-to-market graphite operation, and we're going to round it all up with a trip up to Marble Bar. They're having a huge influx of explorers up there, but we're only interested in one in this section. I think you will be interested in this one as well. So that's all coming up in this session. And you are the very wise people who've chosen to not only listen to my bell when it was rung, but the reason you've done that is to listen to this fellow here, our first presenter. And this is Paul, everyone. Paul Bennett, Managing Director of Medallion Metals. Now, they are a rapidly growing gold and copper resource, and they're based at a little place down in Ravensthorpe. Who's been down that way? Anyone been down to Ravensthorpe? Good that you've been there, Paul. That's fabulous. That's very helpful for your project. So not only have we got that great landscape, etc. down there, they've got this fantastic project that Paul's involved in. And they've actually completed 50 Ks of drilling. Their resources have grown to 1.4 million ounces. Further upgrades are imminent. Would you please welcome Paul to tell us about this story?
And everyone who's here on the story. We're an advanced gold and copper explorer. We've got a portfolio of high quality assets down in the southern goldfields. And our aim is to build project resources to a critical mass that will support the development of a long life and a low cost gold and copper mine in Ravensthorpe. And I'm going to talk to you today about what the Medallion team's doing to make that aim a reality. There we go. Presentation's lodged with ASX. It's a general update. It's not an offer. It's not advice. So we're competing for capital. We're competing for attention with a host of other explorers. And how do you stand out in what is a really tough market for gold equities? And I think these points, when they're taken together, are what separate us from many of our peers. And foremost amongst them is that Medallion controls the majority of a greenstone belt in WA that's fertile for gold and copper. And these assets are increasingly rare. And at some point in time, they're going to be very valuable. The tenements are 500 kilometres from Perth. The access, the infrastructure is outstanding, community supportive. It's had a long association with mining, stretches back for well over a century. We've got scale, and importantly, we've got grade. So 1.4 million ounces gold equivalent at 2.6 grams. It's shallowly drilled. It's open along strike. It's open at depth. It's growing quickly as we drill it. It's de-risked. We're on granted mining leases. We're clear from a heritage perspective. We've advanced the permits and we've completed feasibility work that demonstrates Ravensthorpe will generate high margin ounces. And we think that's a compelling argument to go and look for more of them. We're well funded. We're extremely active. 46,000 metres drilled, another 10,000 metres happening now to grow the resource, to advance the regional targets. And all this is being done with that strategic objective of establishing the critical mass of metal to build a mine in Ravensthorpe. Now, internally, we think that's 800,000 ounces gold equivalent. That gives us 8 years of mine life at a 100,000 ounce run rate. And we're very confident that Kundip itself can yield that critical mass, and then the regional opportunity is just upside from there. Touching on the corporate, 230 million shares out. We'll show $5 million of cash at the end of the September quarter. We completed a fully underwritten rights issue in August with the assistance of our great supporters at Canaccord. There is a listed investment in our neighbours, Nickel Search. We've got a loan to our major shareholder, only repayable in the case of a change of control event or if we make a decision to build the mine at Raven. At the close on Monday, we had a market cap of $38 million. If you adjust for the cash, the debt, the listed investment, backs out an EV of $35 million or $28 an ounce on a gold equivalent basis. And I'll touch on why I think there's upside from that on the next slide. Just in terms of leadership, those names will be well known to people who know this sector in WA. John's been a long-term prominent board member at Northern Star. He's been an exec in a number of junior success stories in recent times. Ed, who's here in the audience, he's achieving great things running London Metals. And similarly, Tony's building something of great significance at Galena at the moment. And those guys are at the forefront of the industry. They're at the forefront of capital markets, and that experience is a great overlay on a really young, hungry, talented senior executive team. And then there's me just really standing in the middle, directing traffic. This is a peer group of explorers. They're ASX listed. Their principal assets, gold in WA, and they're at a pre-production stage. Now, we're located, in my view, at the wrong end of this curve. It's extremely frustrating. We don't like it, but we can't grizzle about it. The only thing that we can do, the market's got its reason. So all we can do is continue to deliver positive drill results into the market, like the results that we released yesterday from the Flag deposit, building confidence, building awareness that we're headed towards that critical mass. And I think as that awareness builds up, we begin to move to the left of this chart. And if you lever an increasing resource multiple on top of an increasing resource, then Medallion looks compelling from a valuation point of view. So just focusing on the company's flagship asset, the Ravensthorpe Gold Project, Medallion has the dominant landholding in the Phillips River mineral field, and critical to that are the Annabelle volcanics, the tenements that straddle those, and they're located around the periphery of the Ravensthorpe tonalite, and they're mapped in this chart in this plan in pink. Now, it's these rocks that have hosted all of the historic production and are host to the existing resources and all of the prospects. And interestingly, it's those same rocks that are host to the pegmatites that Allkem are mining at Mount Catlin at the moment. Now, there's been about 130,000 ounces of gold, 20,000 tonnes of copper metal mined from this area over the journey. It's come from 3 clusters of mines, at Ravensthorpe in the north, down at Alpherton on the southeastern flank of the belt, and then at Cundup at the southern end of the field, where the Archean dips beneath the Proterozoic and continues on to the south. Now, interestingly, that historic production in gross metal value terms at today's prices is roughly a 50-50 split between gold and copper. And we think that copper is going to have an increasingly important role to play in the Medallion story as it evolves. And we're certainly seeing that in the drilling at depth at Cundup, and in particular at the Harbourview deposit. Now, it's at Cundup that the existing resources are estimated. This is where the bulk of the activity, the bulk of the drilling, the bulk of the expenditure is taking place at the moment. And this is where the vast majority of the resource growth is going to come from in the short to medium term. Focusing in on the Cundup Mining Centre itself, we think that the project value, and then by direct extension, the company's value, is massively leveraged to increases in the resource that lead to increases in the mine plan. So that means finding economic ounces. There's currently 1.1 million ounces of gold and 50,000 tonnes of copper estimated inside that mining tenement boundary. 67% of it's in the indicated category, 80% of it's within 150 metres of surface, so it's potentially available for open pit mining. The average depth of drilling here is 100 metres. The deepest hole we've got into the structures is 370 metres below surface, so it's shallowly drilled for an Archean gold lode system. The lodes are open along strike, they're open at depth. We've had an aggressive 41,000 metre drill program completed here to demonstrate that those structures are continuous and open over long distances. And there's another 10,000 metres underway here, and will be completed before the end of the year to reinforce that message. We updated the resource in June of this year. It was based on 26,000 metres of new drilling. We added ounces there on a gold equivalent basis for $11 an ounce. And every metre that we drilled added 23 ounces to the resource inventory, and we're expecting those rates of growth to continue as the drill programs continue. There'll be another update next month based on 13,000 metres of additional drilling. And importantly, a third of the drilling that we've done thus far has been diamond. So we've never had that amount of diamond drilling in the database until this point in time. We're seeing the ore body in the flesh, we're seeing it in situ. It's giving us a really strong understanding of the structural controls of the system. And that, in combination with downhole geophysics, is allowing us to be a lot more predictive in terms of targeting the repeats in the high-grade lodes at depth and down plunge. This is the Cundup resource in long section looking to the west. Global Lithium. It's over the 2.5 kilometres of strike length as we currently understand it. The greys, the indicated, the blues, the indicated, the greys inferred. The ounce per vertical metre profile here peaks at 7,000 on a gold equivalent basis, 100 metres below surface where the data density is at its greatest. Think about what can be achieved here if we can maintain that ounce per vertical metre profile from surface to a depth of 500 metres, which is still shallowly drilled from our Archean gold lode system. Then this area starts to get really interesting in terms of its scale and significance. It's a great address. It's got great potential. And we think Kundip itself has multi-million ounce potential over time. Now, I also mentioned the importance of finding economic ounces. We're really focused on understanding what portion of that resource may convert to reserve in the future. So we've commenced open pit and underground optimizations based on those parameters that you can see at the top of the slide. The results of that work are really very hot off the press. We'll report in more detail in coming weeks, but we're really liking what we see there. Now, I should stress at this point in time, this is not a reference to a reserve. This is just a diluted subset of the existing resource. But we are seeing 75% of that metal report into those diluted open pit and underground shapes. 58% of it is in the indicated category. The pits are averaging a strip ratio of 6:1, and the grade is in line with our previously reported ore reserve estimates when you report it above those cutoff grades. So we've got geometric continuity, we've got grade continuity, and we're seeing that this deposit can withstand the dilution that it's inevitably going to confront when it gets mined. But just a bit of a recap of where we've come from, where we're at, where we're going to. The business has been extremely active since we listed in 2021. We've done a great deal of drilling. It's given the business momentum. And so next month, when we update the resource, we're going to commence a pre-feasibility study. Now, we'll start that work before the end of the year. We'll finish it in the first half of 2023. It's going to tell us a number of things. It's going to tell us what the size of the prize is at Kundip itself. It's going to give us some parameters that we can reapproach regulators with. And it's also going to give us a clear understanding of what's the optimal way to take the project forward in 2023. So next year is going to be all about optimizing the preferred development pathway. And a lot of that will be how to structure the drilling, what proportion of extensional drilling, what proportion of infill drilling we do to get the balance right and get to that critical mass. In terms of the regional opportunity, capital's tight. We're really focused on Kundip. That opportunity is not going anywhere. If the capital markets change, if things free up, then we'll certainly turn our attention back to that regional opportunity. So to wrap this up, we think Medallion represents a compelling opportunity if you're looking for exposure to advanced gold and copper exploration in WA. We want to be at the forefront of investors' minds when they're thinking about getting positioned for the inevitable turnaround in gold equity sentiment. We're well run, we're well funded, we're extremely active. The business owns assets that have got great potential in a great location. The resource is growing every day as we continue to drill it. And the regional exploration opportunity, it's real, it's extensive. We may not test it in the short term, but it's not going anywhere and it represents tremendous upside. So if you haven't done so already, I recommend take a closer look at Medallion, come and see us at the booth. If that doesn't work out, visit us via the website, make an appointment for a meeting, a call. We're always happy to talk about the growth that's going on down at Raby. Thanks for your time.
Paul, if people can't grab hold of you here, you do have your contact details, phone numbers, etc., on the website, don't you?
That's correct.
You do. So you can always, if you're watching, and if you're watching for our audience at home as well. So if you think you'd like to talk to Paul, because we know we've had this discussion before, the beauty of this is that you get to talk to people like Paul direct, but they have their phone numbers there too. So please call them. That's the beauty of this. Thanks so much, Paul. Oh, pardon? See, I'm waiting for someone to come on with a better hearing aid because my hearing aid didn't let me get that very important information. Oh, yeah, go. Better now? Oh, good. Okay, fine. Sorry. Yeah, so these little hearing aids. Actually, do you remember last year we had some guys here who had a company? It was in the top 200 for Time magazine. Yeah, did you see that? It was one of those. I'll get those details for you later. And for you young people who are sitting there thinking, what is she going on about? Let me tell you, young men, that untreated early hearing loss is something that goes towards dementia. And I know that because it's a dementia symposium last year, and I lost my hearing because I was diving in Indonesia and someone was dynamiting for fish next to me. That was nice, wasn't it? Right, back to the important stuff, which is Southwest Connect. So 3 months ago, the next presenter on stage, they picked up a little site in Nevada. They've been a little bit busy since then. Their share price has gone a little bit this way as well. So this very happy fellow is called Robin Cox. Robin is he's a rock boffin, really, aren't you, Robin? It's better than a rock liquor, isn't it? You're a rock boffin, but you love all sorts of rocks. He's got a big thing about lithium, nickel, gold, uranium. Covers a huge portion of exploration that Auroch is involved in. Would you please make him welcome and see what he's got for you as far as investment goes?
Good afternoon, everyone. I'm here today to give you a brief update on Auroch Minerals and how we are leveraged to the future. I'm filling in for Aidan Platel, who couldn't make it down. I've been involved in Auroch for the past 3 years through all phases of exploration on our varied projects. And although this was a last-minute change, it's a pleasure to present on behalf of the company and to speak about these projects that I've been committed to. So just moving through our disclaimers, we've got the listed ASX announcements there that I'll be presenting information on. So who are we and where are we? Auroch have a large strategic portfolio that can be clearly grouped into our nickel assets in Western Australia and our non-nickel assets in South Australia, which has been strengthened by our recent acquisition of the Nevada Lithium project in the US. With the nickel assets, all 3 projects have existing high-grade near-surface nickel sulfide deposits, particularly at our Saints project, where we have a JORC 12 resource of 21,000 tonnes nickel at over 2%. The grade and the depth of this existing nickel sulfide mineralization give us something tangible to push towards near-term development and production to leverage an increasing demand for tier 1 nickel products. Across the whole portfolio, we also have our exploration focus. We have highly prospective targets for critical future minerals, such as nickel, lithium, rare earth elements, copper, and zinc in stable tier 1 jurisdictions in Western Australia, South Australia, and Nevada. We have an experienced in-country technical team to drive that systematic exploration forward and to make those new discoveries and generate further value for the company. Firstly, looking at our South Australian portfolio, and in particular the flagship Aidan project, which has largely been base metal exploration to date, with numerous artisanal copper mines present on the tenure. However, further to the base metals, ionic rare earth element mineralization has been recently discovered on neighbouring tenements in similar geology to our ground, only 25 kilometres away, which has stimulated our own rare earth exploration at Aidan. This was kicked off with a desktop study and review of our geochemical database, geophysics and geology. And from that, we identified it's a bit hard to point to from here, the Hawker rare earth prospect and the Kanaka copper and rare earth prospect. Recently completed some rock chip sampling and soil sampling through that area. We're still waiting on assays to return for the soil sampling. However, the rock chip sampling highlighted a third prospect, and that's the Mount Arden copper and rare earth prospect. Planning and permitting are underway. So when the soil samples are received, we can jump straight into a maiden drill program here targeting those rare earth elements, and that's scheduled for later this year. As previously mentioned, the Aidan project is highly prospective for SEDEX zinc and copper mineralization. In previous drilling at the Ragless Range prospect, we've intersected significant mineralization up to 15.5%, and that's represented by Ragless Range there, which is part of a major synform in that area, where we were targeting a gravity anomaly, and we've since had follow-up downhole IP anomalies, which will generate the next stage of exploration. In line with our mineral strategy is our exciting recent acquisition, the Nevada Lithium project. In June, we acquired 80% of the project, which is highly prospective for large sedimentary hosted lithium deposits. The project is in the very pro-mining state of Nevada in the US, and so another tier 1 mining jurisdiction. It is located near the historic silver mining town of Tonopah and is only 3 hours drive from the Tesla Gigafactory on the outskirts of Reno. As you can see on the map here, the region is home to Albemarle's Silver Peak mine, the only producing lithium mine in North America, and is also within vicinity to other sedimentary lithium deposits, including American Lithium's TLC deposit, which is basically in the center of our 4 prospect areas, those being San Antonio, Lone Mountain, Traction, and Heller. The Nevada Lithium project is a large area comprising the 4 aforementioned prospects that cover the same tertiary sedimentary formation that is known to host the TLC and other large lithium deposits in the region. The project is very much in the greenfields phase with little exploration previously completed, but there are some soil samples that show up to 590 ppm lithium. And waterborne data, we have identified what we believe is prospective seabed formation on our ground, where the sedimentary formation is over 70 meters thick from the surface. And so we know we have a scale in terms of the area and the thickness of the right formation of sedimentary units. And we believe this is large enough to host a lithium deposit. And we have proven that we have lithium in the system. Exploration is well underway. Completed an initial site visit in July, meeting key stakeholders and walking the ground. We're advancing towards a maiden drilling program. We've established a very competent in-country team, including geologists and land manager, who've done an amazing job to date with mapping and target generation. So just that upper right-hand image there is some of the mapping completed by our in-country geologist. The work permits are in the application phase, and we aim to be drilling later this year, depending on the permitting of those approvals. And moving on to our nickel sulfide portfolio in Western Australia. All 3 of our projects are located within the Norseman or Lunar Greenstone Belt, a tier 1 jurisdiction for nickel sulfides. Home to some very large, very high-grade nickel sulfide deposits, and yet still very underexplored with enormous exploration potential for significant new discoveries. And with the existing mines comes the existing infrastructure. All of our projects are within trucking distance to existing plants, some very big and some very hungry plants. That gives us nearby processing options that aren't available elsewhere in the world, and hence allows us to push to recognize value from the existing high-grade shallow resources, whilst exploring for further new discoveries. And in that sense, it really is a globally unique setting. Taking a closer look at our projects and starting with the most advanced, that being the Saints Nickel project, which has our largest resource being a JORC 2012 compliant resource of 21,000 tonnes at over 2% nickel, with fresh high-grade massive nickel sulfides beginning from only 40 meters below surface. In August, we completed a new mineral resource estimate based on infill drilling that was conducted earlier in the year. The update successfully increased the nickel grade by 15%, but more importantly, increased the confidence level, with 2/3 of the resource now in the indicated and resource category. We're now completing a scoping study for the Saints project, which the company will use to define the next work programs moving forward. The metallurgical work completed as part of the study has produced some excellent results, producing high-grade nickel concentrates with good copper and cobalt grades, excellent iron to magnesium ratios, and no deleterious elements. In addition to the Saints resource is the exploration upside. Both St. Andrews and St. Patrick's remain open down plunge. There is effectively no drilling below 350 to 400 meters vertical depth, so still shallow in terms of WA nickel deposits. These things typically mined to plus 1,000 meters. So some excellent potential to build on existing resources. Our second project is the exciting Nepean project, an iconic project being the second operating nickel mine in Australia, producing over 32,000 tonnes of nickel at a very high grade above 3% from 1970 to 1987. So a very high grade mine and very high tenor nickel sulfides. We believe there is a great potential to really build a significant high grade nickel inventory at Nepean by focusing on three main areas. The historic mine, high-grade remnant resource, in particular some very shallow high-grade mineralization. Nepean Deeps, potential down plunge extensions of the nickel sulfide mineralization below the old workings, and regional exploration, new discoveries along 10 kilometers of the fertile Nepean ultramafics. Our main focus at the moment is looking at the remnant mineralization in the historic mine area, and in particular the shallow near surface portion of it. In September, we completed a resource estimate for the shallow material, which contains over 3,500 tonnes of nickel at 1.5% grade, half of which is indicated resources already, which really does present a case for a potential open pit mining scenario that could be used to generate significant early cash flow as we move on to a deeper exploration. With nickel sulfide mineralization being so close to the surface, there is a degree of oxidation. So metallurgical test work was critical to the open pit scenario. We had some excellent results from that met work that really exceeded our expectations, producing saleable nickel concentrates grades at good recoveries. So generally what we're looking at there is a nickel concentrate greater than 13%. On that basis, we're well underway with an internal scoping study to look at the viability of the scenario at Nepean, which will then subsequently look at the underground mine potential of the remnant mineralization and the possible depth extensions below that. Moving on to our Leinster nickel project. You can see that, like our other two nickel projects, we have both known massive nickel sulfide mineralization at the Horn, as well as significant strike of underexplored fertile ultramafics. We recently completed 2 diamond holes there testing the strike along from the Horn, and we're in the process of modeling those. Significantly for the Leinster region, the known massive nickel sulfide mineralization at Horn is relatively rich in copper, cobalt, and PGEs, and has very low magnesium content. So it's very attractive for a potential mining scenario as a possible ore source for blending with nearby magnesium ores. And just quickly to touch on these critical future minerals, and won't go into too much detail here, but suffice to say, it's all about increasing future demand from the renewable energy sector. And we believe with our strategic portfolio, we are in a strong position to leverage this demand. A quick overview of the corporate structure, at current share price, market cap of 23 mil, 371 million shares on issue. We've got 3 million in the bank, so well funded for our planned exploration programs, and really a very cheap EV considering the quality of our projects and the in situ value of our nickel resources. And so just to summarize, Auroch is leveraged to future green nickel demand from friendly, stable jurisdictions through our existing high-grade nickel sulfide resources in Western Australia. We have excellent exploration targets for nickel, lithium, rare earth elements, and other critical future minerals to create value through new discoveries. And we have experienced in-country teams driving exploration towards new discoveries. Thanks. Any questions, please come be available to discuss in further detail. Thank you.
Good start, well done. We're going to change tack a little bit now. We're going back to the medical world and some of the amazing tech that's coming out at the moment. Dr. Liz Dallimore is about to join us up on stage. Welcome, Liz. Come on up here. Now, she is the Managing Director of Argenica Therapeutics Ltd. Argenica is a clinical drug development company, and they're developing novel therapeutics to treat brain injuries. This is the one that I highlighted to you at the start of this session. And those brain injuries can include anything from stroke through to traumatic brain injury. They're entering a really exciting stage of development. It is a phase 1 clinical trial, isn't it? Which is really exciting. So would you please make this amazing human being welcome as she outlines something that could be a game changer for all of us. Thank you.
Thanks, Chrissy, for that very kind introduction. So I know this is probably predominantly a mining audience, so many of you have probably not heard of Argenica, but we think it is a really exciting drug development company that is on the brink of pushing through to clinical trials and starting to treat patients. So just to give you a quick overview of what we're looking to do. So we are developing novel neuroprotective therapeutics to protect the brain following injury. So we're looking at things like brain injury following ischemic stroke, traumatic brain injury, and hypoxic ischemic encephalopathy. And really the driving force behind the company to do this is to positively impact patients' lives. So these conditions are absolutely detrimental on these patients following these injuries. But obviously in doing that, we are untapping a huge commercial opportunity for the company. There are currently no drugs on the market that are able to protect brain cells following injury, such as after stroke and TBI. So just to give you, now that I've given you that snapshot of kind of some of our key company metrics. So we did list in June last year, 20-cent IPO price. We currently have at 30 June, 8.9 million cash in bank, and that doesn't include the 1.38 mil R&D tax that we recently received. So this funding is enough to get us through to the end of our phase 1 clinical trial and to start preparing for a phase 2 trial in stroke. We're sitting around 41 mil market cap, share price closing at 45.5 cents today. So really strong share price performance since IPOing in June. So what is our drug? What are we doing? Our lead drug candidate is ARG007. Now, whilst we only listed in June last year, this has been 10 years in the making by our Chief Scientific Officer, Professor Bruno Maloney. Bruno's based at the Perrin Institute and the University of Western Australia. So he has published 25 peer-reviewed publications on the efficacy, the safety, and the mechanism of action of this drug. And that is quite phenomenal for a biotech company at the stage where we're at. So this de-risks our asset through scientific rigor, which we are really proud about as a company. It has allowed us to get ethics approval for our phase 1 clinical trial, which we announced that we have dosed our first patient and they are still alive. So we are very happy. So I'll talk a bit more about the phase 1 trial in a minute in terms of what that means. The IP is 100% owned by the company. So even though it came out of the Perrin Institute, we do own it. And we have multiple granted patents in our key markets, which really are the US, China, Europe, and Japan. So how does the drug work? So if I talk about stroke specifically, when someone has an ischemic stroke, it's caused by a clot in a blood vessel in the brain. That clot prevents blood flowing to that part of the brain and deprives the brain of oxygen. And that's why you get that cell death in the brain cells at that area of blood flow restriction. But what happens from there is that each brain cell talks to the next brain cell, to the next brain cell. And you get this proliferation out, or this cascade of neuronal cell death. And there's a term, and I think the Envision guys used it in a session previously, that time is brain in stroke. So for every minute that you delay treatment, you get 19 million brain cells dying. So it's really critical to address the problem. But the problem with that is you've got to know what sort of stroke that you're having. So in all this delay, you're getting this cascade out, this increasing proliferation of neuronal cell death. So what we've shown through all our preclinical work is that our drug is able to stop that proliferation of cell death in the brain. and buy that patient time to get the treatment that they need. So as I said, we've got extensive preclinical data, and one of the most striking papers is in non-human primates. So this is in a stroke model where we've showed when we deliver our drug 2 hours after stroke, we're getting a 66% reduction in that brain tissue death. And that's compared to our nearest competitor, NA1, who are currently completing phase 3 clinical trials. But what's probably more striking is that effect, even though it's only a single injection, it's lasting out to 28 days post-stroke, which is really important in terms of the functional recovery of these patients. So as a company, why are we focused on stroke? So 1 in 4 people in this room will have a stroke in their lifetime. That's pretty significant. It's 15 million people a year. And of those people that have an ischemic stroke, only around 10% will recover fully. And there are no drugs on the market that can protect your brain following a stroke. So we are hoping to become a leader in this area of neuroprotective therapeutics. So just to give you an understanding of the clinical workflow when someone has a stroke. So if you have a stroke and you call an ambulance or your loved one calls an ambulance, there's very little that the paramedic can do in terms of triage. So the aim of the game is to get that person to hospital as soon as possible. And the reason for that is because you have to diagnose the type of stroke before you administer treatment. The 2 types of treatment for ischemic stroke are a clot-dissolving drug or mechanical thrombectomy. So a neurointerventional radiologist going in and mechanically removing the clot from your brain. But if you give the clot-dissolving drug to someone that's had a hemorrhagic stroke, so they're having a bleed on the brain, it can exacerbate the bleeding and it can be fatal. So hence the need to diagnose. But if you think about someone that has a stroke in Broome, they need to get to a stroke care unit, which is at Charlie's or Fiona Stanley in Perth. That takes time. You get to ED, you call the Royal Flying Doctors, you come down to Perth, you get wheeled into ED there, you get diagnosed, all the while you get these increasing levels of cell death. So what we're hoping to do is to have our drug administered by first responders, by the paramedics, by the emergency doctors and nurses, to buy that patient time to get to the stroke care unit to get the treatment they need. So as I said, really encouraging results to date. We've got over 13 publications in stroke showing the efficacy of our drug in various animal models. We know that it's safe to administer in the field, so we have published data to show that it doesn't exacerbate bleeding in hemorrhagic stroke. So we can give it to a patient regardless of the type of stroke, so before diagnosis. And we've done extensive preclinical work to show there's no adverse effects of our drug in animals at the efficacious doses. And one critical point when anyone's developing a drug is it has to be able to fit into current clinical workflow. So we know that our drug is safe to administer with the clot-dissolving drug that patient may get later on. I do say that because our nearest competitor I showed before, their drug can't do that. So it is a key competitive advantage of ours. So just in terms of the phase 1 objectives. So the phase 1 trial is in healthy volunteers. We are still looking for more healthy volunteers, if anyone feels free to put their hand up. It is really to test the safety of our drug. Is it safe in humans? How does the drug work in the body? And what is that ideal safe dose that we take into a phase 2 clinical trial? We've put out quite a number of announcements on the design of that phase 1 trial, but just quickly, it's pretty quick. So we've got 4 cohorts. Each cohort is blinded, so we don't know if they receive our drug or they receive a placebo. The first cohort that has now been dosed, they receive the lowest dose of the drug. They stay in at linear clinical research in Perth for 48 hours. They come back on day 8 and they get more bloods taken. We get approval to move to the next cohort, the next highest dose, and so on. So time frame for completion, we will have our final dosing of our last cohort done by the end of this year, early next year, which gives us then the data that we need to put in an ethics application to go into our phase 2 clinical trial, which will be in stroke patients. But importantly, the mechanism of action of our drug lends itself to a whole raft of different neurological conditions. So the ones that we're really focusing on are listed here, but where we've got quite compelling data is in hypoxic ischemic encephalopathy and traumatic brain injury. So if I talk about traumatic brain injury, this data that you see here is in a more severe traumatic brain injury model. So that would be equivalent to domestic violence, road trauma, that sort of thing. And we do have a whole program of work coming up around sort of mild to severe traumatic brain injury, where mild TBI is really related to concussion. But we're really excited about the HIE data that we have. I'll just quickly go to the next slide. So we recently announced this data. So HIE is what's termed a rare pediatric disease. As I said before, it affects infants, newborn infants. So it's usually as a result of things like preeclampsia, the cord around the baby's neck during labour. But the outcomes for a baby that sustains HIE can be absolutely awful. So severe cerebral palsy, severe learning difficulties, severe motor dysfunction. And for these babies, at the moment, the only standard of care is hypothermia. So to induce hypothermia, to cool their bodies down, and which is an amazing neuroprotectant. So it does stop that cascade of cell death, but it also shuts down all the other organs in the body. And in this case, it's not particularly effective. Now, it's a rare disease, which means that under FDA, there's less than 200,000 babies that have this condition. But from a commercial point of view, it gives us an accelerated clinical development pathway. So the FDA said, if you're going to research and develop a drug in rare disease, we want to accelerate that approval pathway, and we'll also give you a rare disease pediatric voucher, which means you can sell onto other companies to get accelerated pathway for any condition. So this data is really compelling. In this animal model of HIE, at our 300 nanomole per kilogram dose, we showed an 86% reduction in that brain cell death, which can mean the difference between the ability for a child to walk or be wheelchair bound. So we're really keen to progress this into the clinic. We have a few more preclinical studies we need to do for this indication, but we can use that phase 1 adult data to move straight into a phase 2 in HIE. So just on to the team. So really fortunate to have, thank you, an experienced board and management team. So with a great depth of experience around not only capital markets, but drug development and taking drugs all the way through the drug development process. And for our stroke, we're supported by global world-leading clinicians. We recently announced the appointment of Dr. Jeffrey Saver, who is based at UCLA. He is the stroke trial guru. He has done over 50 clinical trials in stroke. And when we actually approached him, he was so excited. He's been following Bruno's work for a number of years. And the leading guy is Professor Bruno Maloney. He's the inventor of the drug. He still does all the research for us at Parent. And he is an amazing, he's been working on this for 20 years in the area of stroke, and he is an absolute superstar. So we're so delighted he's still involved in the company. So just to wrap up key investment highlights, we feel that we have de-risked our asset through rigorous scientific validation, which is all peer review published. We have a really strong balance sheet to fund to the end of the phase 1 clinical trial. We are not a one-trick pony. We have multiple applications of the drug in some huge markets and some really exciting near-term catalysts supported by a really experienced board and management team. So thank you. And come and see us. We're in the hot box down the bottom, so feel free to come and join us down there.
That was very good, wasn't it? Brian? Interesting, very interesting. We'll be having a chat with Dr. Liz afterwards. We're going to change gear again. There's such an interesting variety of a potential investment at these conferences. The one that I was talking to you about before with the hearing aids was Nuheara, which was listed in the top 200 inventions by Time magazine for 2020. So West Australian based, West Australian invention, and it's now going gangbusters in America. It's actually been allowed to be registered as a hearing aid. It looks like, for all intents and purposes, just like a little pair of Bluetooth connectors, you know, for your phone, so you listen to music for. So it's there to encourage, I suppose, younger people to wear them. Plus, they only cost $500, and the hearing aids that I'm wearing are $9,500, and they do the same thing. There you go. All right, Dean Tuck, sorry, from Dreadnought. Would you like to come and join us, sir? So we're talking Dreadnought Resources next, and they're a West Australian-focused critical metals explorer with a track record of putting money in the ground and making discoveries. So this is MD, Dean Tuck. He's joining us to talk about the Mangaroon rare earth discoveries and also provide an update across their portfolio as they continue to explore for the metals of the future. Welcome, Dean. Would you please make him welcome, everyone?
Thank you, Chrissy, and thank you for everyone who's here today and joined us online as well. Listening to that last presentation, as a rock clicker, I'm very glad there's smart people out there trying to save our lives and our future children's lives and everything else. So I'm up here to talk about rocks. So I'm a professional kindergartner by trade, so hopefully I'll keep everyone entertained throughout as we go. So I've got the thingamajigger here, ready to go. All right, so Dreadnought Resources, we're a fairly young company, which I'll talk about a little bit. It's been around for about 3 years, a remake of some previous companies that have been around for a while. We're a West Australian focused explorer. We have 3 main projects in Western Australia. Our listing asset, flagship asset up in the Kimberley, copper, gold, cobalt, silver discovery we made last year. Ground that's been off limits since 1978. Very exciting opportunity. We have some work going on up there. But with the Kimberley, there was always the need to have multiple projects going so we could have continuous news flow to keep the market informed about what we're doing and also to keep our top-notch exploration team well engaged. So we also had the Central Yilgarn project down the Goldfields, one of the largest landholders stuck between MinRes and Atlas. And lately, most recently, our big support and our big driver of our share price and our excitement today is being driven by the Mangaroon project, which was one of the last projects we've added, which we'll talk about in a second. So we have 3 main projects. We've got a range of critical metals needed for the future, hopefully medical research and EVs and decarbonization and everything else. And we've built a team and led by our fearless leader, Paul Chapman, who's here today. So if you want to cop some abuse, I'm sure he'll be around. And we're very dedicated to exploration, and we have a track record of delivering discoveries, which I'll talk a bit more about. The last 3.5 years has been very exciting for Dreadnought. We have most recently, as most people are probably aware who have heard of us, we have these exciting rare earth discoveries in hand at Mangaroon, potentially evolving to the other half, if not larger, of Hastings Yangibana operation, Australia's next rare earth producer. And we're currently drilling and confirmed mineralization at the carbonatites, which could be the source rare earth intrusions for that entire region, which, if all that continues to come off, would make that Gascoyne region between us and Gascoyne and Lanthinian one of the largest rare earth provinces around global significance, extremely exciting. But it's been that project we only added just over 1.5 years ago, 2 years ago. This time last year, we got to our second major discovery, the Orion copper, gold, silver, and cobalt high-grade massive sulfides. That took us up to a significant market cap. And before that, we had the Metzkes and Longmore's rediscoveries going through old historical records and going back to the very beginning where we first accumulated everything. We have built our company and the market cap that we have today and our share price and our following through continuous discoveries across a number of critical metals. And each of those projects are still just at the tip of the iceberg in their infancy. So we believe that we still have a long way to go through delivering additional discoveries. We've delivered 3 this year, 4 or 5 in the last 2 years, and starting to deliver our resources commencing from this month, next month in gold, rare earths, and going into next year. So we've had a fantastic track record. We've invested $3.3 million, board and management, into the company. Over 85% of that money's gone into the ground. Last quarter, 95% of that money's gone into the ground, and that's been supported with over an announcement per week to the market. So by continuing to deliver what we should deliver as junior explorers, we also get lucky from time to time, and we are starting to have a lot of luck in delivering a number of discoveries, and we'll start underpinning those discoveries with resources to see that true value. So I'll start off with Mangaroon. That is our flagship at the moment. What we have here, November 2020, we had an opportunity to acquire a very large land holding in the Gascoyne region. And we pegged about 4,500 square kilometers of ground. We have now expanded that to, I think we're over 5,000 square kilometers of ground now. And while initially we went into that area up front because it had nickel and gold, philosophically and taking a step back for the last 10, 12, 15 years, I've wanted to explore the Gascoyne because it's extremely unloved. When we look at project generation, there is a mantra that shadow of the head frame is the best place to go. But if you look at the biggest discoveries and success stories on the ASX, your Dallimores, your Gruyères, your Liontowns, and all these other Hemis, these are all new discoveries in new provinces, not near the shadow of a head frame. These are the tier 1 elephants, and that's what Dreadnought is driven to go out and discover. And we explore aggressively, and we have delivered a number of discoveries already in our very short time period. So while we initially picked up this ground for the nickel and the gold, our very smart geologists wanted to get out there and have a look at Hastings rare earths because we were next door. And lo and behold, less than a year ago, we trip over high-grade rare earths sticking out of the ground. And within a couple of months of that tenement being granted, we already had our POWs and approvals in place. And we delivered that first discovery in June this year. Our second discovery a month after that, after completing a resource drill out on that first discovery. We've made another discovery since then, and we just announced in hand, we believe to be our carbonatite discoveries as a source intrusion of the area, all within the year of these tenements being granted. And we will not relent on that pace of exploration and delivery of results. So at Mangaroon, before we take a step back, so I get carried away sometimes. It's a very large scale opportunity. You're looking at Hastings, those red lines, those are the ironstones that represent 30 years of mapping and research at Yangibana on the Yangibana ironstones. Now, the belief at that time was that the Lions River Fault, which is a major crustal scale structure just to the south, was the termination of that. That's never the case in exploration. It always continues across the fault. You just have to go look for it. And so all that ground was vacant. We picked that up. Yin was one of our initial discoveries there. And last year, all those ironstones and those carbonatites, we've put those on the map. We still have a long way to go in identifying lots of additional targets down there. But before we went after rare earths, because as you'll see, there's a lot of people with rare earths out there. There's a lot of rare earth potential, and we didn't want to get down the rabbit hole of pursuing rare earths if it wasn't real. And so before we even put a drill hole into this, we have one of the greatest gifts in rare earths that anyone could ask for, and that's a second mover advantage. Because of the fantastic work that Hastings has done for the past 15 years, we were able to take 80 kilos of outcrop, puff it out 2.5 kilometers to the road, take it down to ALS and put it through the exact same flotation sheet that they've developed over 15 years to show that we could produce a high quality, high NdPr monazite concentrate before we ever put a drill hole into the project. In fact, before the tenement was even granted. So we knew going into this program that we had something real, we could produce a sellable product. And so we hit it hard with the drilling. And that drilling has certainly underpinned our share price performance in the last few months. At Yin, we had the second mover advantage. Yangibana has been there for a long time, I believe 20, 30 years, Hastings for the last 15. Our first drill intercepts into Yin, we were hoping for something that was 5 to 10 meters thick. The average of the Yangibana ironstones previous to this time was 2 to 3 meters. Our first 6 holes into this all exceeded the grade and thickness that this region had ever seen. It has certainly exceeded expectations by any stretch of the imagination, over 30 meters at 3% rare earths. We hoped we were on to something exciting. We confirmed we were on to something exciting extremely quickly. We had always had a reputation or a mandate, the philosophy, if you will, of planning for success, but budget for failure. So we knew with Yin that if it came off, we could turn this around to a resource very quickly. So we had the approvals, we had the relationships, we had the staffing in place that if Yin turned into something, we could continue going and deliver a resource on that very quickly. And that's exactly what we did. From those first 6 drill holes in 6 weeks' time, we had drilled out 3 kilometers of strike, framework drilling, 200 meter space lines, and then worked our way straight back down 100 meters to 50 meters around that core Yin area. And we delivered that resource drill out in 6 months. We received 84 drill holes back. We have 120. We should have those back in the next couple of weeks. ALS has promised a second instrument being fully dedicated to Dreadnought. So we should see our turnaround times improve dramatically. And we should have that last few drill holes out. And then our resource out on Yin, only 3 strike kilometers of Yin by the end of this year. Aiming for November. After we drilled out Yin, it was all right. We have what is potentially a core starting point of a resource. It's only 3 of that 16-kilometer trend. We went down to our next target, Y3, made the Y8, Y3 discovery at Sabre, discovered more rare earths sitting under a bit of cover down at Y8, multiple loads, getting up to 20 meters thickness here as well. These assays are coming. So not only do we have 3 kilometers drilled out of the 16 kilometers at Yin, we also have a few kilometers here at Sabre, a whole stretch of kilometers of strike at Y8. And again, further underscoring this is just the tip of the iceberg on the ironstone prospect potential of this region. Taking a step back, you can see Y8 to Yin, that's about 5 to 10 kilometers strike distance, and then move north about 5 to 10 kilometers, and that's where our carbonatites sit. And in the classic carbonatite model, you have these cone sheets and these ring dikes that shoot out from a central carbonatite intrusion. Those cone sheets and ring dikes tend to be enriched in rare earths. And when you look at Yangibana West, Bald Hill, Simon's Find, Fraser's, Yin, Y8, all of those dip back towards forming a cone around those carbonatite intrusions, and things like Sabre and Our are these radial dikes that are quite vertical, and those are the ring dikes that are all pointing back to C1, C5, and also C7 as potentially the source intrusions for the rare earths in this region. So it's an extremely exciting time. We've just announced our phase 1 drilling over the carbonatites, which was 2 fence lines across the guts. This was not really designed to hit mineralization. I know we're an exploration company, that's what we're supposed to do, but these were ovoid magnetic targets under cover. We wanted to make sure that these things actually were carbonatite intrusions. And not only have we confirmed multiple pulses of carbonatites and alkali intrusions, we also hit quite thick mineralization in both fresh and oxide bedrock out there. So extremely exciting. We're now already commenced on phase 2, drilling about 2 to 3 holes a day. So we expect to see additional news flow coming out as we drill out C3, C4, C5, and then we'll move up to C1 and C2. So it's gonna be extremely exciting, a lot of news flow. And with that phase 2 drilling, based on the fact that we already have mineralization in hand, we're already planning up phase 3, which will be the infill framework drilling to see what sort of potential prize that we have here after doing the wide space drilling. So we have a lot of assay results trailing behind our discovery drilling, and we have a lot of additional drilling as this program continues to evolve. We have 2 rigs on site. By March next year, we'll probably have 4 to 6. Further upside, and that's only within that red box, we have a bunch of thorium anomalies. I've been talking about these for a while. I'm a bit tired of talking about them, so I'll be up on site, say the guys are running pretty ragged, looking after the rigs and looking after everything else that we're doing at Mangaroon and the Kimberley. So I'll be back in the field last week and this week coming up after I leave the conference here, and I'll be going out personally to chase up these other hundreds thorium anomalies and look at some other ground that we have in the region. So we will have these thorium anomalies ground truth before the end of this year, so that we go into next year knowing what scale of opportunity we have in hand. So that timeline, Yin, the resource drill out is complete by the end of November. We're pushing for that resource to be put out. Once we have that resource, we can then start looking at what's next stages, scoping studies and whatnot. We also have the metallurgical test work coming out in March based on that Yin drilling, about 20 diamond holes. That program's almost completed, and then we'll be moving to the carbonatites and Sabre to do diamond drilling over there. Sabre Y8, we'll convert those to resource after we finish drilling the carbonatites. We've drilled C3, C4, already confirming mineralization, so we will start doing that target evaluation, scoping that up to see how it ranks compared to our other targets, to see which ones we prioritize for resource drilling. And in the background, we still have Y2, Y6, C7, and the Yin extensions to get in place and get ready to drill either this year or next year. And the thorium anomalies, that pipeline is extremely full, showing that this could be a very significant rare earth opportunity. We also have First Quantum doing their work and some gold sitting in the background. So I'm running out of time, so I'll very quickly touch on the other project we're currently working on. That's Taraji Yampi, where we had the Orion discovery last year, 16 million tons at 2 meters at 2.2% copper, 0.4 cobalt, silver, and gold. We identified at Orion and Grants, we had the potential for taking that into resource drilling. We meant to do that now. We identified 6 other Orion lookalikes. We see this as an Avanco style opportunity. The mineralization is very similar to Cloncurry, Eastern Succession, and Tinnan Creek. And so we see the opportunity to put together a camp of copper and cobalt style mineralization that Western Australia hasn't seen before. We have an auger program going on across the area, and we'll fill that pipeline. So when we finish drilling next year at Mangaroon, about halfway through, we'll take our 4 rigs up to the Kimberley, deliver discoveries up there and resources up there as well. Thank you very much.
You still had 3 seconds left there at the end. That was an impressive end though. Right, our next speaker, Andrew Worland, a resource industry leader. He's worked in senior finance, in corporate project management and also marketing roles across the mining sector. He's the founding director of International Graphite, which is an innovative company that intends to produce battery anode graphite to support global decarbonisation and the growing battery industry right here in WA. So it's time to hear about the first mine-to-market graphite operation here in our southwest. Would you please make him very welcome?
Thanks, Chrissy. Thanks, everyone, for taking the time to hear the International Graphite story. We're a young company, but I think we're really going places. IG6, International Graphite, has the vision of becoming Western Australia's, and if it's Western Australia's, it could be Australia's, and if it's Australia's, it will certainly be the world's, outside of China's, first mine-to-market producer of graphite battery anode material. Battery anodes is the space that every graphite producer and wannabe producer at this point in time is looking to get into. The days of just being a concentrate producer doesn't capture the full value chain, and so being downstream into the battery anodes material is where one would want to get to. We believe we have the right commodity. Lithium, our friends in lithium and nickel and cobalt have smashed the electric vehicle battery market open with their branding, and it's time for the graphite guys to step up and show the importance of graphite in any lithium-ion battery. We've got an outstanding location, and it's great to be in the southwest because we've got a very unique offering. The International Graphite owns its 2 assets. It's the Hopetown Graphite Project located in Hopeton, 30 kilometres south of Ravensthorpe, which I've been to, Chrissy, and the Collie downstream processing facilities, which we've established in Collie, which would ultimately treat our graphite concentrates that we produce at Hopeton. IG6 was created off technical skills of Phil Hurst and his colleague Dave Pass. We've been very focused on metallurgy, process design, and technical aspects that feed into the market. And that's been very important for us in terms of branding the company and moving it forward with an investor base. And critical to that, and being Western Australian dominated company, is that we're able to offer something to battery manufacturers that very few others in the world can offer, which is a set of ESG credentials that have a mine to market where the signature of our product can be traced from the mine right through to its end use. Just briefly on our corporate structure, we listed back in April of this year. We have 165 million shares on issue, market cap just under 55 million. $8.9 million in the bank at the end of June, which does not include a $2 million grant from the Western Australian State Government that we received or announced on Monday of this week, and R&D process that we will also have the benefit over the next coming years as we spend that money. As I said, Phil Hurst is the chairman of the company. It's really Phil's vision and drive that's got the company to where it is today. Phil and his colleague Dave Pass spent at least 8 to 10 years in the graphite industry, having done most of the feasibility studies for ASX and AIM listed companies with assets here in Australia, but also in Africa, Madagascar. And it's that knowledge and understanding of the industry and going into the marketplace that awoken their interest in getting downstream. And it's why we've been able to advance ourselves so quickly, because of their technical know-how and their ability to apply that to technologies that can produce battery anode materials. So what's driving the graphite opportunity? No pun intended, but it is the electric vehicle market and the need for lithium-ion batteries. There's been a number of conferences held in the last 6 to 8 weeks which have outlined the need for critical minerals, and the expansion of the critical minerals industry is breathtaking, and what's needed to get to market to allow the world and governments in particular to meet their decarbonisation goals. But a couple of statistics around graphite, which I think are important. It is a element that hasn't really received the same marketing that some of the other elements within the lithium ion batteries have. And I think it's the opportunity is to change that. Graphite represents 95% of the anode raw material in lithium ion battery. You can have up to 10 times more graphite in a lithium ion battery than lithium. And 28% of the lithium ion battery consists of graphite. Benchmark Intelligence, which is, I think, probably the preeminent independent research consultancy that looks at all battery minerals and their demand, have identified 97 natural flake graphite mines that are required at an average annual capacity of 56,000 tonnes, assuming no recycling, to meet the demand by 2035. So that's an increase of 240% of what is mined today, which is a breathtaking number. At this point, practically every kilogram of battery anode material makes its way from China, from various mines around the world, including China. And it's that ability for us to step in and replace some of that supply with an ESG branding that's world-class that provides us with a significant opportunity. As you were driving down here today, it probably didn't dawn on you that you were driving through perhaps one of the most significant battery hubs that's been developed in the world at this point in time. Graphite, like many other minerals, has got critical mineral status. We have established ourselves right in the hub, the middle of that battery hub in Collie, where we have access to world-class services, world-class infrastructure, and people. And we have extraordinary amount of government support, particularly at the state level, as evidenced by that $2 million grant that we received this week for our micronising facilities in Collie. We're surrounded by research centres, lithium downstream facilities, Greenbushes mine, of course, Albemarle, and Nickel West, all looking to do some, and Ecograph looking to provide battery anode material related raw materials to the world. That's a nice image of the infrastructure of our assets and how well located they are. Our Springdale mine is located just south of Ravensthorpe. Ravensthorpe is a significant mining district. Obviously the Ravensthorpe nickel mine, which is owned by First Quantum, is a significant nickel mine globally. And the Mount Cattlin lithium mine, which is also to the north of us, is a significant lithium mine. So we coexist well with the agricultural community down at Hopetoun, and we certainly expect to be able to do the same. Our plan is to mine our graphite, produce a graphite concentrate of 95%, and then truck that to Collie, where it will be turned from a concentrate into the battery anode material through a number of processing stages. What every graphite miner would like to do is capture the full cycle of the battery anode value chain. And this sets out what that is. Historically, graphite has not been associated with electric vehicles. Its primary use has been in other industrial applications. But going forward, the fine flakes that we anticipate to be able to mine from Springdale will pass their way through a number of separate stages: micronising, ferronising, and purification to produce what's often referred to as a PSG product, which is an intermediary product, which then would go to a coating stage, and it's the coated material that finds its way into the battery anode and the lithium-ion battery manufacturers. At each stage of that process, you're looking at doubling your margins, and so the economics of the concentrate is far outweighed by the economics of getting downstream. Part of what's important to International Graphite has been to establish ourselves as a very serious downstream participant. And so one of the things that we did as we committed to our IPO and the post-listing was to establish a pilot plant in Collie to demonstrate that we had the technical skills and the capability of being able to produce those first stages of finished product, which is the spheroidized and the micronised graphite. We believe it's probably the most advanced pilot scale graphite micronising spheroidizing plant that's been installed and commissioned in Australia. We've also ordered and received on site a high temperature purification furnace that's available to be applied to that product. We've engaged nearly 30 local suppliers in Collie, so we've been a very strong supporter of the local community. In September, we produced our first product of micronised and then spheroidized product. This morning, we announced to the market the results of the sizing and distribution results of that analysis of that product, which demonstrated that we're really on the path to the battery anode material quality. The next phase for us will be to order what we refer to as production qualification scale micronizing equipment. And that is the next step in us establishing a micronizing facility, hopefully by the end of next year, which will be the first downstream graphite commercial project in Australia. Ultimately, our goal is to establish a commercial scale battery anode facility in Collie, treating the Springdale graphite project concentrates. So Springdale, just a bit about that. It was our listing asset. We acquired that from Comet Resources. And that's why Comet exists on our share register as a 24% owner of International Graphite. We're 25 kilometres south of Ravensthorpe. We inherited a mineral resource of 15.6 million tonnes at 6% total graphitic content. And within that, there was a high-grade resource of 2.6 million tonnes at 17.5%. And to put that in perspective, that is already sufficient material for us to validate a 10 to 12-year mine life. The mining at Springdale will be shallow. It'll be open pit. So far, we've drilled to 100 metres, and essentially the mineralisation, the resource work has been conducted on drilling that's gone no further than that. Comet were able to do some battery anode work, test work, on metallurgical test work over in Germany, and when we inherited the asset, and they demonstrated that they could produce a concentrate and then have that concentrate purified to produce a 99.95% finished product, which is battery anode material grade. We've also got the benefit of an electromagnetic survey that was flown over the properties back in 2019, but which had no work done on it since that. And that is it there. And it shows both our existing mineral resources, but also hotspots that we think are prospective for graphite. So the yellow highlighted areas right in the middle of that diagram are our existing mineral resource, and outside of that are the hotspots delineated by the red dotted line around many of those patches that show exploration opportunities. So far, we launched a 7,000 metre drilling campaign back in June, July. We've got about 75% through that before weather prevented us from going any further. Results are coming through spasmodically for that. We've received results for 22 holes, both of which identified new exploration prospects. And you can see some spectacular hits there, 7 metres at 13, 5 metres at 12.8, 10 metres at 9.5, and then further hits there in the next 13 holes. So that they were taken from within 500 metres of the existing mineral resource. So from a scale perspective, we're drilling and extending the existing mineral resource. So that the 10 years that we know that we have in the mineral resource that we acquired is going to expand significantly. This will be a 25, 30-year mine. At some point, we're going to have to stop drilling. So our mine to market strategy is based off some very, very strong foundations. The Springdale Graphite Project is a large and growing resource with significant exploration opportunity. It's fine graphite is suitable for battery anode material. We've established ourselves in Collie as a downstream processor. The micronizing and spheronising pilot facilities are running. We have received government support to establish a commercial micronizing facility in Collie, and expansion studies are underway for our battery anode material products that will integrate with Springdale. We have a strong technical team that's been the foundation and the DNA of our company from the start, and it's our overall investment is underpinned by an extraordinary demand for electric vehicles and lithium-ion batteries. And most important, as important as anything, is our ability to say that we can stamp our finished product with ESG credentials, which are probably better than any other graphite producer in the world at this point in time. Just on the right there, I haven't talked about graphite and demand in this presentation. I want to focus just on our assets primarily, but that's a benchmark intelligence forecast of demand relative to existing supply, expansion supply, probable supply, and perhaps potential supply. The gap there is extraordinary. The gap there is extraordinary. We've got the assets that we think can fill that. There's lots of room in this space for other graphite producers, and we think we'll be at the forefront of it. So thanks for your time.
Just out of interest, am I the only person in this room who didn't know what the term spheroidizing means? Do you know what spheroidizing is? Go and stick your hand up if you do. 1, 2, you're all geos, are you? Processes, 3. Huh, good, I wasn't. I sort of dived myself. You can go and ask him yourself what that means. I love learning different terms when we do these different shows. Spheroidizing. Right. We're rounding out this session now, and we've got an absolute doozy. Global Lithium Resources. They were actually ranked as the top performing IPO of 2021 on the ASX. Almost sound like success then. ASX. And I haven't even drunk over lunch. There you go. So what they've been doing is building really big momentum at its 2 West Australian projects. So we've got the Marble Bar Lithium project, and we've also got the Mana Lithium project, which is located in the Goldfields region. And to discuss these projects and more, this fellow is their managing director. He is Ron Mitchell. Please make him very welcome.
Thanks, Chrissy. Thanks to the team for inviting me down to Busselton. I need to have a word to our chair about potentially setting up our next office down here to Warwick. I'll come and see you after the prezzo. Thanks for joining, everyone. It's been a busy day. I'm here to just talk a little bit about our company, how we're positioned within the battery metal space more broadly, and talk about 2 fantastic projects and a brilliant team, an absolutely first-class team that's looking to take us and to be one of the major next lithium producers here in Western Australia. So just before I kick off, acknowledgement of country, to acknowledge the Whadjuk people of the Noongar Nation, pay my respects to their elders past, present and emerging. There is a talent war ongoing at the moment. We take great pride in bringing the best talent into our company. We've built a really formidable board, and our purpose is all about really people, power and the planet. We keep it very simple, but we've found certainly in the last couple of months an incredible talent pool looking to be part of our future going forward. So we're very well positioned. So what makes us unique on a global stage? And there's a number of items, and this slide really unpacks those in more detail. So firstly, we're multi-asset. That's really, really important. It gives us great sort of development optionality. So we own 2 of only 13 JORC compliant resources here in Australia. And what I can say about exploration more generally is that it's becoming more difficult to find really good targets as it relates to lithium. We have 2 outcropping spodumene bearing pegmatites, and these pegmatites are certainly the most preferred raw material in the battery industry. And this isn't anecdotal. You know, I've been to China more than 50 times, and there's a very strong preference in terms of using spodumene bearing pegmatites as raw material feedstock for lithium chemicals used in the battery sector. So our projects are located in arguably 2 of the best mining jurisdictions here in Western Australia, being the Pilbara, our Marble Bar project, and out in the Eastern Goldfields, our Mana project. I talked about JORC compliance. It's really, really crucial for us. It's a long journey to get to JORC compliance, and we're not a Johnny-come-late in the sense that we've done a lot of work in terms of our resources, bringing them to market. We delivered a maiden inferred mineral resource at Marble Bar prior to our IPO. There was 3 or 4 years of work that went into that resource. So it's incredibly well understood from a technical perspective. We've got a really strong team, a lot of experience in lithium. I've been in the sector more than 11 years. I'm also the current chair of the LME Lithium Committee, working with the likes of Tesla and Ford and other global EV value chain participants. And certainly as it relates to lithium, we're very familiar in terms of deal making, but also project execution. I'll talk about the board and our experience as a collective on the next slide. We've got some fantastic counterparties on our register. You know, we've been very strategic in terms of the likes of Mineral Resources coming on our register. They've recently increased their stake to 8%, showing tremendous faith not only in the projects but the team. And Suzo, TANA, I'll touch on this company as well, but both companies bring both downstream and upstream lithium expertise to the company, which is something we'll leverage going forward. We're in a great jurisdiction. There's no better jurisdiction not only to be mining, but specifically for lithium mining. Here in Western Australia, we've got this incredible talent pool, technical, commercial, legal expertise. And it's not just the mining companies themselves, it's all the contractors, the laboratories, the logistics services companies. You know, there is no jurisdiction on the planet that comes even close to Western Australia. So we're very fortunate. WA supplies more than 50% of the world's lithium. And I suspect next year it'll be close to 60%. And that's quite phenomenal. We've got a very unique opportunity here in WA, and it's something I sort of stress on everyone in this room and everyone's involved in the battery metal sector. This isn't an opportunity, a once in a lifetime opportunity. You know, in my view, this is the first time in humanity that we've had the opportunity to be part of an industry that not only is going to power the future, but is going to create a better place for our kids and our grandkids. And that's something that really gets me and keeps me incredibly motivated every day. So I'll talk about our board. I won't deep dive in each of the individuals, but it's a really powerful board, incredibly ambitious. Collectively, as a team, we've delivered close to $100 billion in resource projects, and we've got more than 150 years of experience in terms of the West Australian mining sector. And I think that really pivots us incredibly well as we move from advanced exploration into a development stage in the next month. Just a snapshot of the company. As Chrissy mentioned, we've had a pretty amazing ride since our listing in May of last year. We've got a tight register, about 200 million shares on issue. Market cap popped through 500 million. It's done that a couple of times, and in recent times there's incredibly strong institutional interest in the stock, and also the partnership interest as well from downstream strategics. We do have a tight register, as I said. There's two major cornerstones on the register, being SUSO, TANA and Mineral Resources. A couple of high net worths. Board and management have significant skin in the game at about 5%, and the balance is retail and institutional. Institutional part of our book is probably less than 10% at the moment. But again, our share price has performed incredibly well, not just on the back of general sentiment and market pricing, it's on the back of real deal flow. You know, we've been involved in M&A. We've delivered inferred mineral resources on one of our projects. We're multi-asset, and we're doing the right deals at the right time. There is broker coverage. I'll let you follow up with these in due course, and this is all non-paid. Canaccord, Shaw and Partners, Macquarie and Argenica Securities. The jurisdiction piece is really critical, in my view, and I've been following lithium companies on a global basis, and each jurisdiction, in my view, has a unique set of challenges. But what we have is that is unique, is this brilliant branding internationally. And hats off to the likes of BHP and Rio and Fortescue and these types that have really created this Team WA brand. But it's a brand that we'll leverage on or leverage from as a lithium industry, because they've unlocked ports, the port infrastructure we have, the road rail infrastructure. These are all critical assets for our lithium industry as well. And also there's a recognition downstream and offshore of the ability of Western Australia as a state to deliver tons to market in whatever form that is. And that's certainly one of the reasons the global EV value chain is really turning their attention to WA and all the producers based here. We produce spodumene. I'm a hard rock guy. Spodumene has a number of very unique advantages. Speed to market's one of those. I talked about the quality piece, the consistency piece. That's really critical for the downstream OEMs as well. So we're in a brilliant position owning two assets. Both of those are spodumene hard rock. Mineral Resources, I probably don't need to introduce this company to anyone, but importantly, there's some strategic synergies here in terms of the location of their assets in relation to ours, up in the Pilbara, and also the Mount Marion JV that they run together with Ganfeng near Kalgoorlie. As I said, they've bumped their stake in our company up to 8% recently, and they have just an amazing fast track record of delivering these upstream projects. So that's, again, a relationship that will continue to evolve as we go forward. And our other partner, SUSO TANA, it's a controlling shareholder of a very significant lithium hydroxide producer in China called Yibintan Li. The other shareholder of that company is CATL, which is the biggest EV battery company on the planet. And again, this relationship gives us insights into what's happening in China from a technology development perspective. But it also gives us fantastic access to potential downstream expertise. And we're a company that's going to be pivoting in the public domain very soon in terms of bringing a downstream development strategy with relation to lithium hydroxide to market shortly. Pricing, don't need to touch on it. These are the prices as of Monday this week, all-time highs as it relates to all of the lithium chemical products, but also spodumene concentrate. And this chart by benchmark is really quite scary if you look at it. It looks at future demand for battery lithium, and it shows you where we are currently in red. So we've got an enormous way to go, and projects like ours are absolutely crucial to the success of this industry going forward. We have also recently executed an MOU with SK On, one of the world's largest battery players. They have brilliant technology, a great team, diversified globally. They've got assets in Korea, China, Europe, and also the US. And they have a joint venture with Ford Motor Group, which is a relationship that we are also benefiting from going forward. This MOU also looks at the potential of this company to support us in terms of future capital raises and also prepays in terms of greenfield project development, and of course looking at some joint venture downstream lithium production opportunities as well. So it's a really strategic MOU. Let's talk about a project, Samana. This is a recent aerial photo taken from the site. This is an incredible project, and I've said this publicly now for a couple of months. This will be one of West Australia's new mines as it relates to lithium. We've made incredible progress on this asset since acquiring it last year under a joint venture. It is an outcropping spodumene bearing pegmatite, as I mentioned. We have delivered a maiden inferred mineral resource of close to 10 million tonnes at 1.14%. And that was defined on less than 4,000 metres of drilling. So just to put that in context, we've just recently completed a campaign, a new drilling campaign of close to 24,000 metres, and that's a combination of RC and diamond. So huge upside, great infrastructure. And just to talk about the resource for all the geos in the room, it's hosted in 100% greenstone. I've said to the guys, we need to stop drilling because we keep finding more lithium. So we're just focusing on an infill campaign at the moment, which will feed part of our significant resource upgrade, which will come in early December. So this will be an open pit mine. We've got great coalescence at depth, but importantly, we've got some very shallow hits in terms of some high grades, 1.4, 1.5, 1.6% lithium oxide close to surface. Very clean core. There's very few gangs in this material. So from a processing perspective, we're very confident we'll be producing a saleable concentrate. We've collected about 2,000 tonnes of core, which will feed into the metallurgical test program currently underway. That'll be announced to market next year. We only need about 300 to 400 kilos of core, pegmatite core, to kick off the met test program, but we're looking to take this core all the way through past concentrate and into a lithium hydroxide and demonstrate to the market that we can produce a battery grade hydroxide from our pegmatite. Great photo here, again, just showing the extent of the asset, the resource and the drilling. You can see the pad clears there. Got 3 drill rigs on site, 2 RC, 1 diamond. And this just shows you the extent of the ore body. It's a significant one, and fast forward 3 or 4 years, there'll be a wonderful pit there, and we'll be producing. Again, we've had some great progress. I've been out site a few times. We've had a brilliant record in terms of safety. And now moving on to Marble Bar, second project. Again, this is a project located up in the Pilbara. Great access to infrastructure here. Again, we've got a sealed road running through our tenement boundary. Another maiden inferred mineral resource on this project, 10.5 million tonnes at 1%. And we're just concluding a very significant RC drill campaign, which again will add to the resource upgrade going forward. And peerless as far as infrastructure goes, 160 kilometres to Port Hedland and a sealed road through the tenement. Some great hits here, good grades. It's a big site. We've got lithium mineralisation over a 15-kilometre distance within our tenement package. So there's lots to explore going forward into next year as well. So we do have quite a significant campaign earmarked in terms of exploration next year. We have completed met testing on this product, on the core from this particular asset, and we can produce a very high grade concentrate at very high recoveries, sort of 5.9% lithium at 76% recovery. So demonstrated again, we can produce a saleable concentrate. And this is incredibly clean, a clean pegmatite. So just finishing off, This is a new slide just showing momentum going forward the back end of this year and into next year. Feasibility, scoping starting next week. We'll conclude that by the end of the year. That'll pivot us and position us for feasibility commencing early next year. Resource upgrades coming, metallurgical test work coming next year. Environmental native title approvals will be ongoing through the course of 23-24. FID sort of 24 positioning and commencement of construction in early 25. So that will have first tons in market 26. So that's a great runway ahead for us, and one that our partners on the downstream piece are very excited about. Just finishing off my last slide, why invest? I mean, this is quite simple for us. Great jurisdiction, 2 great resources, gives us wonderful optionality, great starting position in terms of maiden inferred mineral resource, close to 20 million tonnes, big upside coming, a great team, great infrastructure in terms of our projects, so a lot of positive news flow coming to market. ESG is important. We have a strategy we're delivering to market in the next couple of months. We understand how crucial ESG is, and what I can say, it's more than just the E, the S and the G. So finally, Chrissy, thank you.
Thank you, Ron. I don't know if you were here before, but I'm not allowed to speak just at the end of your chat, because otherwise we get my words. We don't want my words, we want your words. We have got 18 minutes. Go and have afternoon tea, and then we've got 5 fantastic presenters. It's actually gone really quickly today. We've got 5 more to go.